Hi friends, if you need something for a honeybee study and you want it to feel a little more substantial, this is a really good one. It works well if you're teaching multiple ages and it gives you enough depth to actually build a full unit around it. So let's have a quick look inside my honeybee life cycle unit study. This is a 62-page printable pack for preschool through 5th grade, and it's designed to make a bee study feel both manageable and genuinely interesting. This pack is also part of a bigger collection of themed science and reading resources, so if you like going deep on one topic at a time, it fits really nicely into that kind of homeschool rhythm. The unit starts by laying a really solid foundation. Before jumping straight into bees, it explains what the life cycle is and also introduces the idea of metamorphosis in a way kids can actually understand. Then there are vocabulary pages that explain important science words like larva, pupa, chrysalis, cocoon, molting, and instar. I always like having these kinds of pages in a unit because they help kids feel confident with the language before moving into the more detailed learning. From here, we move into the honeybee life cycle itself, starting with a simple worker bee life cycle diagram that shows the 4 stages clearly: egg, larva, pupa, and adult. One thing I really love in this pack is that it doesn't just repeat a usual life cycle format. It actually explains that the worker bee life cycle works a little differently because worker bees don't lay the next generation of eggs. That role belongs to the queen, and I think that adds a lot of depth to the study. There's also a full page on complete metamorphosis, which helps kids understand that bees go through major body changes from one stage to the next, not just simple growth. Next, we have the magazine style pages, which have a lot of information presented in a visual way. This page explains what the egg looks like, where it's laid, and how the queen determines whether an egg becomes a female bee or a drone. Next is the larval stage, and this is one of those parts kids usually find fascinating because the larva doesn't look anything like a bee at all. It also explains how the larvae are fed and how queen development differs from worker development. Then we get into the pupal stage, where all the really dramatic changes happen inside the sealed cell. This page goes into that transformation in a way that feels detailed but still very relatable for kids. And then we get to the adult stage, including how worker bee's jobs change as she gets older. I really like that this page shows bees as a part of a working colony, not just as isolated insects. After that, there are more life cycle visuals, including separate pages for the worker bee and queen bee life cycles. These are really helpful if your child learns best by seeing the process laid out clearly. Then there's a printable mini book for younger learners, and this is such a nice addition if you're teaching multiple ages together. It gives younger kids a simple, hands-on way to follow the same topic without needing a totally separate unit. These next pages give more practice with the life cycle, including worker, drone, and queen bee versions. So kids are not just memorizing 4 stages, they're also noticing differences within the colony. There's also a timeline page that shows how long each stage lasts, which is really useful if your child likes exact details and real science facts. Then there are more printable review and matching style pages plus cards, which are great for reinforcement without making it feel dull. Next, the unit expands into colony life. These pages cover the queen, workers, and drones and explain what each bee does inside the hive. I love this section because it helps kids see the colony as a system. And of course, this also has tracing and cards pages. Then there's a really fun curiosities poster page with surprising bee facts, and honestly, this is the kind of page that tends to pull kids in even more because it gives them those memorable little facts they want to repeat later. After that, there's a section on types of bees, which I really appreciate because it reminds kids that honeybees are not the only bees in the world. It broadens the study in a really natural way. Then we move into anatomy. There's an external anatomy page and also an internal anatomy or dissection style page, which makes this especially good for kids who always want to know how things work on the inside. And then we go into review. The next 2 pages are comprehension worksheets, which help check understanding and give older students a chance to process what they've learned in a more structured way. And this section is one of my favorite parts of the pack. It includes hands-on activities like a pollination simulation, a static electricity and pollen activity, a bee life cycle pasta craft, a bee hotel project, a honey taste test, and a worker bee job timeline. So the study doesn't stay only on paper, it gives kids ways to interact with the topic too. Then there are extra printable pieces like cards and stickers, which are fun for review, sorting, notebooking, or just making the unit feel a little more special for younger and visual learners. Toward the end, there's also a visual, deeper bee vocabulary section with more advanced terms, and I think that's really helpful for older kids or for families who want to go beyond the very basics. And finally, I included some answers and notes for parents and teachers, as well as 5 coloring pages for you to choose from, going from simpler to more complex drawing. So overall, this is much more than a simple life cycle printable. It's a full honeybee life cycle unit with info pages, diagrams, vocabulary, hands-on activities, review pages, and options for different ages, all in one place. If you want something thorough but still easy to open and use, this is a really lovely resource for a bee study. If it looks like a good fit for your homeschool or classroom, you can find it below. I hope this video was useful, and if you want more resources like this, hit that like button and subscribe, or head over to my blog at monkeyandmom.com. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious.